welcome back to Every Arnold Movie Ever, bonus episode number 1. And it's a bonus episode because early in Arnold Schwarzenegger's career, as he was still getting his sea legs as an actor, he took some smaller roles and bit parts, mostly playing to the strength of his physique, pun intended, rather than the strength of his acting.
This fine food for only a few small coins.
It would take 3 years after Hercules in New York for Arnold to land his next gig. And if you're wondering about the neck brace, which I'm sure you are, it's because after going from watching Hercules in New York to his next movie, Robert Altman's The Long Goodbye, I suffered whiplash. And that was a long way to go to get to that gag. By the way, I couldn't even find a neck brace. This is just a cotton roll. This is what happens when you come up with an idea right before you shoot and you're at CVS trying to figure out what the hell you're doing with your life. Anyway, holy shit, this movie, it fucking rules. And before we talk Arnold's role, let's talk a little about The Long Goodbye. It's based on the Raymond Chandler novel about Private Eye Phillip Marlowe. Marlowe is the quintessential hard-boiled crime protagonist. He's been portrayed on screen by Humphrey Bogart, James Garner, Robert Mitchum, and here in The Long Goodbye, by Elliot Gould. Marlowe's character is usually defined by fast, clever dialogue and intensity. But in Altman's hands, Marlowe is much more lackadaisical, laid back, and that feels like a defense mechanism to disarm the people around him so he can get the information he needs. But a lot of times this approach just leaves him a step behind. Apparently that's to show that he's out of sync with the times. I mean, he literally opens the movie by waking up from sleep. He drives a car from the 40s, and he's the only person who smokes in this movie. It's funny to watch now because he walks into bars, other people's houses, hospitals, just smoking away, and he never asks anybody like, hey, is it okay if I smoke? Also, he can strike a match off anything. It's so cool.
About
Arnold!
Excuse me, Mr. Wade.
Certainly.
Here, Scotch, bourbon, aquavit.
And unlike previous iterations of Marlowe, this one isn't like a super tough guy. He owns a cat, and Marlowe spends the first 10 minutes of the movie trying to feed it in like 3 different sequences. Elliot Gould plays him as a lonely guy driven to find the truth wherever it takes him. His dialogue is incredible.
Oh, is this where I'm supposed to say, what is all this about? And he says, shut up, I asked the question.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's almost tossed off as if he's just talking to himself and nobody else is listening. Sometimes they aren't.
Excuse me, I'm supposed to meet Roger Wade here, and I feel like that old man's pants. What the colors after that?
The script is written by Lee Brackett, and for any of you nerds out there going like, where do I know that? I know I've seen that name somewhere. It's because she wrote the first draft of Empire Strikes Back. And the music, by another Star Wars connection, John Williams, is various versions of the theme song, The Long Goodbye, heard through the radio.
There's a long goodbye.
And a bar piano.
As cheap as I work, you cannot lose.
Or from a group of partygoers. It's just very striking and unique. And while this is technically a film noir, Altman tweaked the script to be more of a satire of the genre. It's more violent, it takes place in the 70s rather than the 50s, and as I mentioned, it has Marlowe less in command of what's happening around him. Now, the plot revolves around Marlowe's friend Terry Lennox shows up to his apartment claiming he got in a fight with his wife and he needs a ride to Tijuana from Los Angeles. Marlowe obliges, but then finds out Lennox's wife was murdered. And Lennox is suspected, and Marlowe is jailed for possibly aiding his escape. So when Marlowe is let out, he then finds out that Lennox committed suicide, and I promise we're getting to Arnold. The plot actually is kind of secondary to everything. It's more about Marlowe interacting with all these strange people in Los Angeles, from the cops to a drunk Hemingway-esque writer and his Dr. Landy-esque psychiatrist, to Marty Augustine, an unhinged gangster who has a bizarre habit of removing his clothes to tell the truth. Augustine is looking for $50,000 that Lennox owes him, and he thinks Marlowe has it, which leads us, finally, to the appearance of an uncredited Arnold Schwarzenegger at 1 hour, 30 minutes, and 50 seconds into the movie. Arnold plays one of Augustine's heavies. He walks Marlowe into Augustine's office, And it's really interesting because when you first see Arnold, it's Augustine reaching under his desk and turning the lights up, and there's Marlowe, and boom, there's Schwarzenegger. The first thing you're going to notice is, oh my God, Arnold has a sweet, sweet stash. Wow, a rare Arnie stash sighting. How rare? Well, other than this, as far as I can remember, he has a mustache in a file photo of his character on a TV screen in The Running Man, The Butcher of Bakersfield. And then we don't see a mustache on Arnie again until this big old caterpillar in 2019's Iron Mask. If there's any more out there, we will be sure to uncover them in this series. But for now, let's just savor this wispy, entirely too long mustache for a moment. Arnold, buddy, clearly you don't have experience with mustaches. You gotta either cut it off at the end of the lips or let it keep going. You can't just stop mid-cheek. And at first it seems like all we're gonna get out of this performance is a sweet mustache because he spends the first couple minutes out of focus and sitting down. And then Augustine tells everyone in the room to take their clothes off so they can get closer to the truth.
I want you to get naked so you can tell me the truth about my money.
You want to take your clothes off?
Would you like me to take off my clothes?
It's okay with me.
Why, it's a pleasure. As a matter of fact, everybody. Harry, everybody take off your clothes.
Marty.
And I know that sounds really bizarre out of context, but the movie primes you to accept it. There are a ton of quirky characters throughout, so once you've met Marlowe's naked hippie neighbors, the security guard who does celebrity impressions.
I don't understand. I don't understand it at all.
And the guy who works in the grocery store but then also gets jailed for punching a cop for arresting his girlfriend who's protesting. Like, that's a backstory for a guy you see for 2 minutes. You find that a bunch of dudes getting naked in a room, it doesn't seem out of place. And so Arnold does what he does best at this point. He thinks back to the shirt-removing skills he gained on Hercules in New York and expertly peels off that shirt. And it's here you get a look at how far he's already progressed as an actor, because he makes a few subtle acting choices. First, he gives us a little pec flex. And it's like I always say, if you got the pecs, you gotta flex. His next choice is to look directly into the camera, playing up the post-noir motif to let us know he knows this is just a movie. Definitely wasn't an accident. He also may or may not be chewing gum, but I couldn't quite tell. A little inconsistent. And then finally, he cracks his knuckles.
Where did you get it?
Well, I tell you.
Where did you get it?
Classic cliche bad guy thing to do. And just as Augustine is about to do something very bad to Marlowe...
Cut it off. Cut it off? That's what I said. Cut it off.
He gets an urgent message, tells everyone to leave the room. And you think that's the end of Arnold. But before Arnold leaves the movie, he gets one legit subtle gag that you wouldn't even notice unless you were just looking at him, where he reaches for some money and gets his hand slapped away for his troubles. And that moment and the earlier moment where Augustine forces him to give up his seat for a woman.
Get up. Get up. Up! Yeah.
You're given all the information you need to know. This is a huge, powerful guy, but he is a straight-up henchman with no power or respect, and Arnold totally nails that. 6 minutes and 8 seconds of silent screen time. And that's pretty cool to be a part of this Robert Altman neo-noir film, and here's what Arnold had to say about it in his 2012 autobiography. Oh, right. He said nothing in that entire book, not one word about the long goodbye. Silence! Just like his character. This man is a method actor. All right, let's go to the Arnold stats. Acting skills. You know, I'd give him a 2, but one of those is simply for the stash. Kill count, 0. And 0 lines of dialogue, so his catchphrase will default to his knuckle crack. Watching The Long Goodbye, I was reminded of a college course I took called Kiss Me Deadly. And I had no idea what that class was about. I just took it solely on the name. And then when I showed up on the first day, I found out it was all about film noir. What a surprise. What a pleasant surprise. Kiss Me Deadly is a 1952 crime novel and 1955 film noir. And we watched a bunch of films like Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep, and we read a bunch of books. And one of my papers that I wrote argued the merits of The Terminator as a film noir, or tech noir named after the nightclub in the movie. I think I even said Kyle Reese was a femme fatale. And I got an A. And so I didn't even realize at the time that Arnold had already been in a stone-cold classic noir 11 years earlier, and I wish I had, because The Long Goodbye is awesome. Come for Arnold's stash, stay for a kick-ass movie.